I want to introduce to you tonight a superstar in Christian music. And it hit me. That's where that foolishness began. There are no superstars. But they began to develop a mentality of anybody that has Christian television ministry is like the world, a superstar. That's repugnant to God. Andre didn't believe that, by the way. He knew better than that. But that's where that began to come into the church. Steve, stunning evangelist and prophet profound. Why? Because they've been on TV. They must be true. No, I won't get into all that. I spent a number of years working there, and I want to tell you about 20% of it was genuine. The rest of it was fluff. Amen or oh no? Amen. Y'all getting really quiet. Welcome to my end of days message. So God's going to deal with the whitewashed sepulchres that have sprouted up among his people. He's going to expose the deadness that is within the temple. And he's going to do that by once again shattering the facade and allowing it to be destroyed so that the true man of the Spirit will come forth in glory and in power. It's unfortunate, but history records over and over and over again. It takes a natural disaster, a war, a persecution to cause God's people to fall on their knees. It takes crises to cause us to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and attend to the things we're always supposed to attend to. You are the temple of God, and it's supposed to be a house of prayer. For all nations, not this building, not the gathering together. You are the temple. You are to be a house of prayer. That's what Jesus said. My house is called to be a house of prayer. And he drove the money changers out. Guess what? He's going to drive out in this hour all the false idols, the false speculation, the garbage that we have allowed to accumulate within the temple that is God's. And he's going to cause us to become everything he says. And it's coming through disaster and persecution and antichrist spirit. And I'm telling you, it's going to accelerate now. Now, I'm not trying to frighten you, but if it frightens you, good. It's going to push you right to God. He's the only solution right now. The only solution. You know, in America for the last 10, 15 years, they talk about, we've got to store up food, and we've got to get off the grid, and we have to get ready because, all these things are coming. I'm not against that. If God tells you to do it, do it. But you don't do it because your neighbor's doing it. Now you're following a man and you're not following the Spirit of God. Do you know there are testimonies, there are miracles happening where not only does God multiply food, tremendous miracles, but there's also miracles where God has given grace and revelation so people don't even have to eat anymore. For years, they feast on the word and they're satisfied. You see, we limit ourselves in the things of the kingdom by measuring ourselves among ourselves instead of looking at who we called to be. God can do anything, but he won't do anything in your life if you don't believe and if you don't look to him. We're in a season of crisis right now in the church. I wished I could say it's getting better. You are the remnant. You wouldn't be at a conference like this if you weren't. So I'm not here to beat on you. I'm speaking corporately to the whole church. I know you're hungry for God. That's why you're here. I know you have a destiny and a purpose in God. That's why you're here. But I also know the rest of the church is in trouble. And we have to begin to model something for them that they can look at and say, that's the real God. That's the real kingdom. That's the real word. I want what you've got. We're called to provoke them, not judge them and push them off a cliff. How can we provoke a lukewarm church if we're chameleons and we blend in? We cannot. We cannot. The Lord is saying it's time, church, to arise. There is something going to happen in your life this weekend. One of the things he showed me to do, I'll do at the end of the meeting tonight, God will pierce your heart. And it's a blessing that he's doing this. Because you know what? When you have a boil, you lance the boil and you let the poison out. Supernaturally, God's going to pierce our hearts so the boil, so the sludge and the putrefaction is going to come out of us, and we're going to be positioned then to stand up as men and women of God and radiate and reflect the glory of his presence. So many people are always asking, I want to see God. How do I do that? Very simple, die. Die to the things of this life. Crucify your flesh. Paul understood it. He said, I die daily. Choose that path that's less trodden, that's less traveled. What is that? Holiness and sanctification. That's less. I mean, most of the church doesn't even understand this anymore. They think it's a program. They think it's greasy grace. I got a license to live like the devil because I've already been forgiven. I hate to tell you, when you come to that door, you're going to be surprised. That's door number one. Later, when they arrived at the Mount of Olives, his disciples came privately to where he was sitting and said, well, tell us then, when will these things happen? And what supernatural sign should we expect to signal your coming and the completion of the age? I like that. What supernatural sign? And Jesus begins. Here's the first thing he says. At that time, deception will run rampant. Deception is a supernatural manifestation at the end of the age of the devil infiltrating the church and causing that which is holy to become that which is debased. It's taking away truth for error. It's positioning people that have been in the kingdom back into a quagmire of doubt and unbelief and things that are not of God. That's the first thing he addressed as a supernatural sign of his return. Deception. And it's all over. The greatest lack in the church, if I can identify any one thing, is the lack of the discernment of God's people. You know, we want the gifts of the Spirit that are spectacular, so we look powerful. We love to see miracles of healing and raising of the dead and all these wonderful glossolalia and prophesying and tongues and interpretation and the gift of faith, we can do anything. But whoever cries out for the gift of discerning of spirits, very, very few. And that's the most important right now. The foundation of all of these is love. But we need discerning of spirits desperately in the church because there's foolishness running around rampantly, masquerading as God. I'm appalled when I watch people that see miracles and instantly that person's anointed of God. Really? Seriously? The devil can do miracles. We've got to stop being wholesale in our approach to these things. We've got to discern by the Spirit what's right and what's wrong. You know, most of you have discernment. If not all of you. You get that little nudge like, something's a little bit off. But everybody else is going this way. You can't do that. Listen to what God's given you. You want to know how discernment increases? You listen and obey. Well, what happens if I miss it? You learn. But don't judge. Do not judge. You can judge a spirit, don't judge an individual. If you know they're off, you pray. God have mercy. Because that's us. The most prolific spirit of unbelief is resident in the church.